Hello and welcome to Career and Training right here on Afia TV, DSTV channel 254 and GoTV channel 17. On socials, we are at Afia TV Official. Career and Training comes your way every Tuesday by 3:30 p.m. and this is where we bring various experts from different fields to show us what it takes to excel in their field. I am Ifeoma Ajimobi, Ife Melody, your host, and we're reaching you live from the beautiful city of Enugu, the coal city. It's always an interesting time at Career and Training. On Career and Training, we do really explore various kinds of career. And today, wow, this one is quite unique. It's called grief coaching. Yes, we're talking about grief coaching. And I have a grief coach in the house. And also, she is the founder of the Healing Hearts Support Widows Foundation. I am talking about Barrister Chigozie Udemezue live here in the studio. Welcome to the show. Great to have you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ifeoma.
You're looking really beautiful in this attire, really.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Welcome. Just before we go ahead to understand what grief coaching is all about, we will take our career tip right now. All right, our career tip says actual learning. I mean, everything starts with an idea, then execution brings it to pass. Everything starts with an idea. So the kind of ideas you have is very important. Then going forward to, put it to happen is also another very important step. But ideas, they say, rule the world. Now, we're here to talk about grief coaching, but even beyond grief coaching, Barrister Gozie has been all about supporting widows, women who are in pain, especially after losing their husband. But let's hear the story from you directly. How did you become a grief coach and what does that career entail?
Thank you, Ifeoma. In 2013, my husband was killed by a drunk driver and I was pregnant. And so I took a decision to have the baby in the US. And when I got there, I found out I was practically, on my own. People went to work and returned in the evening. Some went in the evening, returned in the morning. And it was the darkest point of my life. And so most times I found myself either on Facebook or on the internet researching. I was in church. I was going to church. And, in church, it's well. It's well if you don't understand the meaning, if you are not able to unpack it, won't take care of the nitty-gritty of the grief because it was devastating. And I had 2 children back here in Enugu, 2 teenagers, and I was over there in the US. And then along the line, I had the baby, and the baby wasn't alive. She was breathing, but that was it. And I needed help. But I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't want to talk to any pastor because they would say, oh, you've always been a woman of faith. So just keep faithing it. I didn't want to faith it anymore. And so I went online and I saw grief coaching. So I investigated, researched, and I found out that there were individuals who will help you, not help, support you to walk through grief the way that suits your need. So I contacted someone, and my first shock was the fee per hour.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. But money at that point, money wasn't my problem.
Okay.
So I paid.
Okay.
After the first session, I felt different. I felt like
oh, really?
I was able to face the grief. I was able to recognize it. I was able to look at it eyeball to eyeball because I was in denial. And I kept thinking that my phone was going to ring and it would be him. Meanwhile, I had his phone with me.
Okay.
And so when that helped me, I moved forward. I forgot about anything grief coaching till 2020. During COVID, I was in New York, indoors, all the time, sticking out my head from the window. And so I started thinking of what of these young women in Nigeria who were coming to my foundation who had issues of loss. They couldn't deal with it. Everywhere was in a lockdown. So I went back on the internet. The internet is very useful.
Yes.
And I started researching on institutes I can train with to be able to provide what I received. I didn't have any problem with experience because I've seen grief. I've experienced it as an 8-year-old losing my mother. I didn't know it was called grief, but that was a loss that I'm still dealing with till now.
Wow.
Then I lost my foster mother, who was called Mama Anyi. That's where the name
Mama came from.
So I lost her at the age of 21. A day before I lost my best friend. Years down the line, I lost a mentor like a sister.
Wow.
And the year after, I
Wow.
lost my husband. So
Wow.
I've seen grief, but I needed learning. I needed knowledge. I needed to be trained. And so that was how the interest, the passion, and the training, and I got certified as a grief coach. It wasn't mandatory. It's still not mandatory to be certified, but I needed to because it's not counseling, it's coaching. There's a difference between the two.
Okay.
So that's how I got there. And each time I have to sit with someone and do for them what I received in 2013, it gives me a lot of pleasure. And when I see some of my previous clients and how well they are doing, especially the one at home, it helps. But you know, here we don't confront grief.
Okay.
We bury it.
Okay.
We pretend as if it didn't happen.
Okay.
And we don't face the consequences, loss. When not just about death of a husband, it could be loss of a child.
Okay.
It could be loss of a job.
Yeah.
There are people that lose their jobs and they are devastated. So loss of any kind, but I zero into loss of a loved one.
Yes.
Because that's what I've had to deal with basically all my life.
So people, how are they accepting this, especially in Enugu and of course Southeast and Nigeria? You pinched it a bit, but let's go into the details well. When did you, you said 2020.
Yes,
I
I had the training and then I got it registered with Evolution Coaching, Grief Coaching Service. And because I have had the face of philanthropy.
Okay, yes.
People are not able to know that there's a boundary between Evolution and Healing Hearts. So when they hear grief coaching, they believe that, I'm going to Gozier's office and it's going to be free. It can be free, but it's highly subsidized. Now, most of my clients are being sponsored by relatives in the Europe, in UK, in the US, who understand grief coaching. Here, somebody will say to you, but I lost someone. You know the tradition here, when somebody is bereaved, you give them money. So they are connecting it to grief coaching that I have to give free service. But then they go to the hospital and they pay. When I lost my husband, I still paid to have Daniela. I didn't say to them at the hospital, I lost my husband, it's going to be free service. And so it's healing that is within. And having somebody also is an added advantage who had dealt with grief as a child, a teenager, early adult, as an adult, and almost as a grandma. There's a difference merging it with the training, with the knowledge. In Enugu, no. Is it not part of the widow's free package?
Yeah.
Because with Healing Hearts, we give free. And this was something I was doing free in Healing Hearts, So free consultation, like the widow I met with yesterday, it wasn't coaching. It was more of counseling and trying to, find out how we could help her to sustain her business, how we could support her with her rent so that she could be all right. So Enugu is not ready yet.
Okay.
Southeast, I've had clients, especially from Abia State. I've had clients from Lagos, Abuja, that paid for themselves.
Okay, so what's the difference between grief coaching now and counseling?
Grief counseling is where you focus on the emotional needs of a bereaved person, and you as a counselor can direct them on the path to toe. when you are a grief coach, it's based on the needs. So it's personal. You conduct a needs assessment because how I'm dealing with my grief, what I want is not what any other person might want. And what you need to do is beyond the emotion. You detach the emotion. You have to think about moving forward. What are the strategies for moving forward? Now, if you don't deal with those strategies, they get into what is called prolonged grief,
Okay.
which might take, like one of my clients in 2021, lost her husband 11 years ago as at 2021. The first entry point I had with her sounded like she just buried her husband the previous day. So she hadn't dealt with the grief. She was taking care of everyone. And so for such a session, you want to know this is where you are. Where do you want to be? It's about the person.
Okay.
And when they tell you where they want to be, how do you want to get there? They might not have clarity, and that's where you step in. And so holding them by hand, like myself, that was what the woman did for me. She said, this is where you are, stuck in the hospital. 3 hospitals in 6 months, and paying thousands of dollars in cash. And she said, where would you have been if this didn't happen? I said, I would have been in London for my master's program. And she said, oh, you are a student? Yes, I was taking a master's degree at the University of London, and the debt shut me down. And then she said, so where do you want to be in 10 years? And I said, 10 years is far. I can't even see 10 years. I want to know where I'll be in 1 year by the end of the year. And so we started with that. So it was me. And she said, do you still want to take a PhD? Yes. How? You could see the navigation. So I own it. With a grief coach, you own the journey. You own the process. Because when is the grief coach owning it? You think that you are doing her a favor. But when you own it, I am still in touch with her. And so I sent to her, oh, I got admission for PhD. Sadly, it's not University of London. It's here in Enugu. I don't want to mention the school so that it won't be like I'm demarketing them. And she said, but PhD is PhD. Nobody is going to. Just don't worry. Just go ahead with it. And so it's me that owns that process. So what it does is it moves beyond discussing your emotion. How does it make you feel? And goes to the point of creating and recreating strategies, because you might have your own strategies, which that death must have turned around. I had my strategies to, conclude my master's because I was just a supporting partner. My husband was the one, doing the big thing. And suddenly I found myself training a child in university, training another one in an expensive high school, and then having to give birth to a child that, even when I brought her back to Nigeria, I had to do 4 flights on business class every year to take her back. It was back and forth because she couldn't sit. A lot of nonsense going on. Now, and so grief coaching helped me to recreate my strategies and to create new ones. And one of the recreation was to sustain the foundation. And we've done a lot more than we did before my husband died, who was also the vice chairman
of the foundation.
Of the foundation, yeah.
Wow, quite interesting. And one of the things you said here is really, really true. We tend to just bury grief. We don't deal with it, face it headlong. And I think it's a major challenge, around here. But so far, for the people you have been able to, coach, what are the kind of results you've seen? The kind of results I've seen is, okay, let me give you an instance. When I coach a man who lost his wife, we come from a stereotyped society that says a man should not cry. How could you? A man lost his wife, leaving him with maybe 4 children, 1 child, no child, lost his wife, and you say, don't cry, be a man. What does it mean to be a man? Not to express your emotion, so they bottle it up. And so what I do in that kind of situation is to ask the man, who will you ordinarily cry in the presence? Most times they say their mother. And so we draft a script where they go back to their mothers and they cry. Wow.
And so when they cry...
Wait, Adult men go back to their mothers.
Yes, and
cry.
express how that loss
Wow.
makes them feel.
Okay.
And they cry it out because even Jesus wept. So was he not a man or is he not a man? Why are we, especially Igbo men, the way we raise men in this place, they become macho and they pretend. Tear down that pretense, and you will see that they are human and they need help. Now, what we do here is to make them pretend that everything is fine. Then we push a lady to them and say, you have a girlfriend, somebody to take care of your children, to cook for you. Oh, go and marry. They have not dealt with the grief. And that's why some of them will never allow you to put down the picture of their late wife. Sure. Oh, you won't dare.
Sure.
Because they haven't dealt with it. And so the new woman is struggling with competing with the ghost and being married to her husband. Now, when you make them to recognize the grief and talk about the process that led to what happened. Like me, I had to talk about everything. When they talk about it, they come face to face with it. They demystify it. And now you begin to reconstruct. You begin to think of what are those ways. And that first stage, most times when I go through the questionnaire, they say they slept better. Now, what grief does is it shuts you down. You don't want to do anything.
Very true.
You don't want to. Like myself, when I lost my husband, I am the kind of person that wakes up at 5 in the morning, go down to the kitchen. Before 7, I've made some meal. I like cooking. I couldn't do anything. And then I got to the US and I just couldn't function. I couldn't think. Nothing. All I did was take photographs. And people were not looking at the pictures. They know that I love all the glamour and fashion. So they were seeing the fashion. They weren't looking at my face. Now, when you get to that point when the person is truthful and embrace the grief, we have a session where you embrace the grief. The next thing is, when this grief is over, in quote, because it's never over. It's 11 years I lost my husband. I say there are still reasons to cry. But when you decide to move forward, what will you want to do? So you begin to engage the mind of the grieving person. And to be honest with you, when I look at some of the, my previous clients, and I hold them dear, when I see them, the young lawyer I started with at Omuahia had a lot of ideas, but she couldn't get up. At times at 10 p.m. when it's time for the session, she will still be in bed, not having done anything with herself. And now she wanted to have a store. She wanted to start a food store, business, underwears, but she couldn't birth it. And now when I see her, I was in Omuahia in May. I shopped from her. My daughter shopped from her. It made me happy that she's... And so the danger in grief is, if you don't get that push, you might be static for a long period of time.
So the coach is pushes the person.
Yes.
Okay.
And when they resist,
okay. All right. What happens?
You pull back a bit.
You pull back?
A bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because if you don't pull back, you are invalidating their grief.
Oh.
Yes. So if they walk in and they've paid you for an hour and they say to you, Gozie, I don't feel like talking to you today. Oh, that's fine. So can we stare at each other? You don't say, oh, you must talk to me, you have paid. No. And they say, you are right. What happened to you was really devastating. You really don't have to talk. There's power in silence. The same person that didn't want to talk will make a detour and start having a conversation. And most times during the sessions, you don't always dictate how it will start. There's always a question that might make them, give you a direction on which way to go.
Let me take you back a little bit. I'm still trying to get the difference and understand better the difference between counseling and coach. Because some of the things you've said here also sounded like some of the things counselors do. So what exactly is the difference now?
Now, as a coach, I am not stopping at your emotional needs, unpacking those emotions and helping you to heal your emotions. After healing, what next?
Okay.
Now, what a coach does is to handle you in practical terms and help you to create your strategies to cope with the grief, because there are coping strategies, to help you to create and recreate strategies for moving forward.
Okay.
For a coach, it's very, very important to move forward.
Okay.
Because if 3 years ago I had a client, and today I still meet her where I haven't done anything. And so it's not a one-off thing. I am in touch with my clients, not because they are paying, but because I also want to be sure. So what are the coping strategies? What you told me you would do in 2023, let me know how you have done it. At times they will tell you, I don't know how to move forward. I told my coach, I said, I don't know how to move forward. I don't even know how to go back to Nigeria with a sick child with tube in her nose. And I remember she said to me, it's not yet time to go back. You are jumping one day at a time. And so I remember the day we were going home, I called her, I was at the airport, and I said, Coach, I'm on my way home. She still has the tube in her nose, but I am prepared to face life.
Face it headlong. Wow. So, that's quite an interesting experience. Would you say it's very important for people to get trained as grief coaches?
Yes, it's important to get trained. It's also an extra advantage if you are a psychologist. There are people that get trained as therapists. But grief coaching has its own peculiarity. You have to be passionate. So beyond the training, like me, I have a mandate to meet with somebody that is sad and not leave that person the same. It's something that is in me.
Wow.
And that's why I've been able to cope with widows. I remember my daughter saying to me, Mommy, I don't know how you do this, but you know, I am a trustee member. I am a board of trustee member, but I'm not planning to. So I don't know, whatever you decide to die, this foundation, I'm not going to take it over. Because she doesn't understand that a woman that was just wailing and crying will suddenly, it takes a lot of work.
Yes, I have a typical case. A colleague of mine actually lost the husband, and she's still dealing with losing the husband. The mother-in-law dies. And then the way she lost the husband is not as if he was sick before. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Healthy man, like you're waking up to go to work regularly, and then he loses his breath. They rush him to hospital. He doesn't come back again. So I'm not even the person, but I keep imagining, if it were me, the kind of shock. I mean, it's too shocking. Like, so you can imagine what that person is going through. And I actually recommended your class to the person and was ready to support the person for your class. Just that it clashed with, her burial date for the husband and all of that, the husband's burial date. But I could not imagine it. So you having to deal with widows too, all the time. Like very depressing stories and
not just
situations.
widows, children.
Oh, children too. Okay, yes.
Yeah, we have a package for children in grief.
Okay.
Because most times, especially for men, when you lose your spouse, be sure that your children are prepared to transit into calling another woman mother before you do that. So there's that conflict, and they don't open up. And then
especially the men, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, because
and children
most
too.
widows will stay.
Okay.
You know, and then most times we keep saying even my daughter told me, my daughter said, practically everybody that came here, they kept saying to me, take care of your mom. What about us? I have very vocal children. So I just looked at her in my mind, I was like, but I've been with children in the coaching space, and I asked them, what is the most difficult thing you have to face? And they said, they are asking us to take care of our
mother.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's something we say here, and it's something that is, hurting these children. And because they can't say anything, they just smile and keep quiet.
Wow.
It's important that we also focus on the children and know when they begin to heal. Some of them go to school, the mood swing. I'm drawing up a program to train teachers who handle children who lost their parents.
Okay.
So that they will know the signs, they know what to do, and they know how to provide some kind of first aid before they begin to seek for that help.
Wow, quite interesting. It's a long discussion, but we will try to wrap it up right now. But before we go, I would not fail to say congratulations on the Healing Hearts Widow Support Foundation.
Thank you.
That clocked 16 years, 16 years of doing this work.
Yeah.
All right, we also have our book recommendation. Our book recommendation comes now. Our book recommendation says Widowed, Widowhood Redefined, okay? And that is by Barrister Gozie Udemezwe. If you pick that up and you're going through grief, or you've lost a husband, it will help you a whole lot. And you can gain a lot of insights from that. Widowhood Redefined. All right. This is where we'll end the show, but what will be your final word for our viewers and possibly anybody who wants to tour this career?
My final word for the viewer is open up yourself, embrace the grief. Stop pretending and hiding behind religion and saying it is well when you yourself know that you need to.
You need help.
Yeah, you need help. Seek help, and especially professional help, and not just any family member who will make you feel guilty, because we make people feel guilty that they are grieving. And anybody who wants to toe the path, please make sure you are passionate, because you need passion. You need to be an empathetic person, and you need to be an active listener, because you might sit with someone who has paid for 3 hours, and all they do in 3 hours is just to tell you how they got married in 1960, and you just have to listen and make your entry point from there.
All right. This is where we keep learning, and learning never ends. It comes from every angle. Today, it was about grief coaching. It was about widows. It was about people losing loved ones. Next week, another episode on career and training will be a very special one, and you don't want to miss it. This is where I would say bye-bye. Thank you for watching. I am Ifeoma Ajumobi, Ife Melody, your host, and we've been with Barrister Gozie Udemezwe, a grief coach and the founder of the Healing Hearts Widow Support Foundation. Join us again, same time on Afia TV, DSTV 254, and GoTV Channel 17. Have a beautiful day.